I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. So today we are going to discuss about the approach and systemic therapies for metastatic hormone sensitive prostate cancer, and the role of radiotherapy in metastatic hormone sensitive prostate cancer will be discussed in the next panel discussion by Dr. Pritanjali Singh. And I welcome all the panelists from the east and northeast part of our country who are expert in this field: Dr. Leena Gupta, Dr. Shankar Deb Roy, Dr. Parthopratim Medhi, Dr. Amit Kumar, Dr. Arup Kumar Roy Burman, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Mishra, and Dr. Niharika Panda. I am sure that at the end of this discussion, we'll learn how to approach and manage such patients. And this particular topic, which we are going to discuss today, has got particular importance. And we all know that the ADT has been the cornerstone of the systemic treatment for metastatic hormone-sensitive prostate cancer since 1940s, when Huggins and Hodges demonstrated its efficacy, for which they got the Nobel Prize. And men who present with metastatic hormone-sensitive prostate cancer represent a heterogeneous group of patients and has a 5-year survival rate of 30% as per the 2017 SEER data. But in recent years, there has been a successful drug and imaging advancement that may alter this scenario. So let's begin today's discussion. So first we need to know what we follow as hormone sensitive and hormone resistant or castrate resistant prostate cancer in our clinics. So may I ask Dr. Leena her view on this? Dr. Leena.
Hello.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, Dr. Gautam.
Yeah, so ma'am, what definition you follow for hormone sensitive or hormone refractory in your clinic, ma'am?
For hormone sensitive, it is basically when the hello.
Yes, ma'am. Audible.
Audible, no? Like
yes, ma'am. You're audible.
Gautam, please go ahead to another panelist.
Okay. So particularly when defining castrate naive, so patients who are not on ADT at the time of disease progression, and NCCN has even mentioned that the patient who had neoadjuvant concurrent or adjuvant ADT as a part of radiation therapy, provided they have recovered testicular function. But presently we have seen that many men who have progressed on primary ADT may still remain hormone sensitive and are referred to as CRPC. And coming to CRPC, CRPC is a prostate cancer that progresses clinically, radiographically, biochemically, despite the castrate levels of testosterone. So Dr. Shankar.
Yeah.
What castrate testosterone level you take in daily practice? It's 20 or 50 nanogram per DL.
We usually take castration level of testosterone 50 nanogram per deciliter in our practice.
Okay, so usually we take 50 nanogram, but many of us we try to achieve less than 20. So this particular study has shown that if we can achieve less than 20, actually the outcomes are good. So Dr. Partho, what investigations will you carry out in a suspected case of CA prostate?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so in a suspected case of CA prostate, first of all, before going to investigations, we must take into account the history and clinical examination of the patient, family history of prostate cancer, or if there is a known germline mutations history like BRCA is present in the family, then these are indications of germline mutation testing as per NCCN guidelines. And
Yes,
also
yes.
we must take into account the symptoms of the patient, the presence of comorbidities. And next, going to the laboratory investigations, we all know that serum PSA is the cornerstone of management. But I would like to emphasize on that. We must also take into account the transrectal ultrasonography volume of the prostate into account, so that we can calculate the PSA density. Because
Yes, yes.
it has been shown that if you do the PSA density, if it is less than 0.07 nanogram per ml square, then in borderline PSA rises, it may prevent a prostate core biopsy in 20% of the cases. And then moving on, we must go for the biopsy of the patient. Trust-guided core biopsy, 12 to 14 cores using a thin needle from the different parts of the prostate in a systematic manner is the cornerstone of diagnosis. But in the recent times, multiparametric MRI of the prostate has helped further in increasing the sensitivity and specificity of trust-guided biopsy. If it is done prior to the biopsy procedure, then we can do a MRI guided. The MRI, the T2 weighted sequences and diffusion weighted imaging sequences can guide us in taking a more focused biopsy from the prostate lesion. So these are the investigations: the PSA biopsy and the MP-MRI of the prostate, and of course the baseline testosterone levels, a baseline DEXA scan, and cardiac and liver evaluation, function evaluations will help us in guiding our treatment later on.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Partha. So now may I ask Dr. Amit, what imaging modality will you like to establish for metastasis? Dr. Amit.
Yeah, I'm audible.
Yeah, sir, please.
Okay. See, we have to do at least a PMSA scan to establish the prostate. Okay, and second is that whole body bone scan along with CT thorax and abdomen.
Yes, sir, exactly. And the current international guidelines that is available to us, they do not address any specific staging, imaging and follow-up monitoring in patients with metastatic hormone-sensitive prostate cancer because of lack of evidence. And we know that PSMA PET just got approval in last December only. Thank you, sir. So Dr. Arup Roy Burman.
Yes.
So, sir, what are the treatment decision-making points for a newly diagnosed hormone-sensitive prostate cancer?
So here I would like to mention that the symptoms of the patient that should get the priority, and performance status along with that, plus life expectancy, because this is a old age problem usual, and there will be naturally some comorbidities that we will have to take into account. And after that, one of the major decision-making point is that disease burden. These 5
Yes, sir.
points I would like to mention.
Rightly said, sir. So let us come to the case proper now. A 70-year-old man with good performance status, hypertensive on regular medication, having moderate urinary obstructive symptoms. On DRE, bilateral nodularity of the prostate gland was found, and his PSA was 40 nanogram per ml. And biopsy revealed adenocarcinoma, 10 out of 12 cores positive, with Gleason's 4+4. And MP-MRI of the prostate was carried out, which showed T3B-N0 disease. The patient underwent PSMA PET, which showed 2 bony metastases, one in T12 and the other in L1 vertebra. Both the lesions were very small. Patient didn't have any symptoms, and there is radiologically no risk of any fracture. And the life expectancy of the patient was more than 5 years. So the overall diagnosis for the patient is M1b hormone-sensitive prostate cancer. So as we have learned that first we have to define the metastatic burden as high volume or low volume. So may I ask Dr. Sanjeev, sir, what criteria you follow in your clinic to define high volume versus low volume, sir?
There are mostly 2 criteria, like 2-3 criteria are there. Like high volume disease, usually chartered criteria, we look into that. How many lesions are there, whether it is less than 4 or more than 4. Visceral metastasis is very important actually. If you have a visceral metastasis, they are really the candidate for chemotherapy. Other than the hormone therapy, they are the real candidate for chemotherapy. So that's what we look into it actually.
Yes, sir. So particularly in our clinics, what we take, if the bony metastasis is 4 or less, we take as low volume. More than 4 or any visceral mets, we take as high volume disease. So our case comes out to be a low volume metastatic disease. So these are the systemic therapies that we have in our hand. So first going to ADT alone. So asking Niharika ma'am, what will you prefer, surgical or medical castration?
Okay. This also depends on the patient's option, whether he's wants to go for bilateral orchectomy, or he wants to go for a medical castration with LHRH agonist. So we'll ask the patient, and we know that bilateral orchectomy will be cost effective, and if we see that the patient is 70 years, so we can go for bilateral orchectomy.
Rightly said, ma'am. So, ma'am, any specific subgroup of patient who will benefit from ADT alone?
Yes, when the serum serum testosterone with low volume disease, we can go for ADT alone, and but the trials have shown that in the low volume disease also, if we add abiraterone to ADT, there is a prolongation of overall survival.
Ma'am,
and
we'll discuss abiraterone later on, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am. So yes, ADT, this work 9346 trial, which was carried out before the near anti-androgens were available, in patients who reach PSA of 0.2 on ADT alone by 7 months of treatment, the median survival was 75 months. And this is important to consider in patients whom the addition of additional agents may result in significant or intolerable side effects. So, Dr. Lina.
Yes, Gautam.
So ma'am, what will you prefer, continuous or intermittent ADT?
I think there is not much difference in continuous or ADT for him because he is an elderly patient. I think if intermittent is given, we would prefer that because it will,
rightly said, ma'am. This meta-analysis also said that the intermittent androgen deprivation is non-inferior to the continuous therapy. So coming to ADT plus docetaxel combination. So Dr. Shankar.
Yeah, Dr. Gautam.
So sir, is there any role of adding docetaxel to ADT in low volume disease?
There are mainly two trials we are following. Mainly one is TEMPEST trial, one is CHARTED trial. So
yes,
both these trial, the subgroup of the patient, those who are low volume disease, they
yes, sir.
They are not showing much benefit adding docetaxel.
Yes, sir.
So I would prefer to give only ADT.
Yes, sir. So the data from the CHARTED trial showed no benefit, and the data from the STAMPEDE trial also showed a non-significant trend to benefit. So what we conclude that patients with low volume metastatic disease should not receive docetaxel. And this is what also NCCN says, docetaxel should not be offered to men with low volume metastatic prostate cancer. So Dr. Parthav.
Yeah.
What doses and cycles of docetaxel would be preferred in a patient who has high volume disease? And additionally, I would like to ask you whether you like to prophylactically use the filgrastim in this patient.
Okay, so as Shankar sir has rightly said that we follow the results of the CHARTED and the STAMPEDE trial for guiding the docetaxel treatment in metastatic prostate cancer. So in both these trials, the dose of docetaxel used was 75 mg per meter square, 3 weekly regimen for a maximum up to 6 cycles. So as this much dose has shown overall survival benefit, I think there is no point changing the dose regimen. We should follow this. And again, coming to the GCSF use, in both these trials, it was investigator dependent. The GCSF use was investigator dependent as per protocol. So it was not a strict criteria. So and NCCN, however, gives the option of using GCSF. I think that that should be on a case-to-case basis, depending on
Yes.
the
Yes,
on
Dr.
how
Partha.
the patient presents.
So typically we need to follow a 3-weekly docetaxel regimens, that is 75 milligram per meter square, and number of cycles usually 6 we follow. And NCCN and both Charted and Stampede trial, they have given the option of using prophylactic based on the case. So Dr. Amit,
Yeah, tell me.
so sir, is there any benefit of using abiraterone along with ADT?
Yeah, in low volume disease, there is a definite benefit of using abiraterone with ADT.
Yes, sir. So both the Stampede trial, the G arm, where the median follow-up of 40 months were there. So abiraterone and prednisolone and ADT conferred 37 relative OS benefit when compared to ADT and placebo. And additionally, the abiraterone arm showed a 71% improvement and decreasing the SRE, means skeletal related events, among the entire cohort. The same findings were given by the Latitude trial also. After a median follow-up of 30.4 months, the OS advantage in the abiraterone plus ADT arm was better when compared with ADT plus placebo arm. So both the Stampede and Latitude trials showed benefit in radiological and PSA progression and prostate cancer specific mortality. Dr. Arup?
Yes.
Dr. Arup?
Yes, I'm here.
What doses of abiraterone and prednisolone you would like to prescribe to the patient?
So by and large, it is 1,000 milligram per day, along with prednisolone 5 milligram. Though some say the 10 milligram, but the most popular is 5 milligram per day. That should be the dose.
And particularly there is a phase 2 trial involving the CRPC patient where 250 milligram daily was tried.
Yes.
And they found good results. But this is for the CRPC patient, not hormone sensitive prostate cancer patient.
Exactly.
So Dr. Sanjeev.
Yes,
sir. So sir,
Yeah.
is there any role of enzalutamide or apalutamide with ADT in low volume disease?
See, basically the role in low volume, still it is there definitely, but we have to sequence it. It's not that there is a role and you need to add enzalutamide upfront or like
Yes,
this thing. So
Yes,
that will be in the second line or third line. Okay. Usually it was associated with a significant longer PFS and overall survival than the standard of care. But the take-home message should not be like that. It's a low volume disease, you add enzalutamide. No, it should not be like
Yes,
that.
sir.
There is a
Yes,
time
sir.
for that actually.
Yes, sir. So this ENJAMET trial, it showed benefit of adding enzalutamide, and this Titan trial, which was also published in 2019, the same year, and they have also shown benefit of adding apalutamide to ADT. So basically what sir was saying that it is right that there are many lacunae in this trial. So we have to see that the Titan trial included 16.4% of the patient who underwent treatment for localized disease. Similarly, ENJAMET trial also around 40% patient had prior local therapy. In Latitude and Stampede, the rates of patients with recurrent disease were actually lower. So Niharika ma'am.
Yes.
So ma'am, are these systemic therapies free of side effects?
No, all the systemic therapies, you are talking of ADT
Yes,
or are
ma'am.
you?
Everything, ma'am.
Yes, all the ADT or abiraterone or desflurane, all the systemic therapy have different side effects. So you have to judge and see the patient's comorbid conditions before prescribing therapy, or during therapy we should also monitor during therapy. Like in the abiraterone, you have excess mineral corticoid and you have edema, hypokalemia, and increased cardiac events in ADT also. Um, so you have to judge and monitor during the treatment the different side effects, and accordingly you advise.
Yes, ma'am. So this is data from the Swedish National Healthcare Registers, and it has shown that all type of ADT, there is a risk if the patient has prior history of cardiovascular diseases. And abiraterone plus prednisolone may lead to hypertension and hypokalemia, enzalutamide fatigue, hypertension and rare seizures, apalutamide rash, hypothyroidism, and docetaxel is associated with myelosuppression and neuropathy. So we have to keep in mind while prescribing this medication to the patients. So coming to the skeletal related event. So ma'am, do you routinely need to prescribe zoledronic acid and denosumab in metastatic hormone sensitive prostate cancer?
No, NCCN doesn't recommend the uh, uh, prescription of zoledronate during the in the low volume disease or hormone sensitive prostate cancer. It's
Yes,
only
ma'am.
for CRPC.
Yes, ma'am. So the STAMPEDE trial also showed no benefit of adding zoledronic and denosumab. And one more randomized trial that included 645 patients of metastatic prostate sensitive prostate cancer, they didn't get any advantage. So NCCN do not recommend routine use of bisphosphonates or denosumab in patient with metastatic hormone sensitive prostate cancer unless there is a high risk of fracture. So only
Yes.
in patients with metastatic prostate resistant prostate cancer, denosumab and zoledronic acid have a proven role. So now how to choose? Actually, if we see adding abiraterone, enzalutamide, apalutamide to ADT confers almost similar OS benefit. And one paper published in NEJM, they have said that until enzalutamide are marketed at the same similar prices, their routine use in management of any stage of prostate cancer cannot be justified because of the prices. So there was an Indian survey also among the patients of CRPC, included medical oncologists. So they have found that the lower dose abiraterone should be used now since NCCN has got a recommendation. So for CRPC patient, we can use lower dose of abiraterone, that is 200 milligram of abiraterone along with fatty diet. So now coming to the conclusion, there is an increasing drive to focus on biologically based disease taxonomy rather than classifying as castrate sensitive or castrate resistant, because we have seen that even if the patient become castrate resistant, there may be a component of hormone sensitivity in them. And treatment decision for metastatic hormone sensitive prostate cancer must take several factors into account, including the patient and the disease factor, and importantly, the availability of the drug, its cost, and the related side effects. So I thank you, the organizers and all the panelists for joining us today. Thank you.
We all know that prostate cancer is one of the second most frequent tumors and the fifth leading cause of mortality in men worldwide. And it is actually a heterogeneous disease with a spectrum of different biological behavior. And it has different clinical presentations ranging from indolent microscopic disease to very, very aggressive disease with a strong tendency to metastasize. Radiation, however, plays a very important role within the treatment landscapes of prostate cancer, from upfront treatment for localized disease with curative intent to post-radical prostatectomy adjuvant therapy to adjuvant therapy in the salvage settings, and also as a palliative treatment for men with symptomatic metastasis. So coming straight away to my case, I hope my panelists are there. Mr. XYZ is a 75-year-old man. He is retired, a former factory worker, and he has no major comorbidities, taking no medications as such, with a good performance status. He has been presenting with the lower urinary tract infection for the last 2 months. So On clinical examination, he does not have any lymphadenopathy or organomegaly. Digital rectal examination shows a large nodule was present on the left with blurred margins. The median sulcus was not obliterated. So, may I ask Dr. Dinesh, how would you proceed further with the diagnostic workup in this case?
Yeah, yeah. Good evening, all. So, this man presented with the urinary symptom and with the urinary tract infection, and the clinical examination on DRE, the nodule present in the palpable in the prostate. So, next workup, I think on clinical examination, it's might be a CA prostate, so we have to work up in that direction. So along with the CBC and chemistry, and the trust guided 12 core biopsy is important, and the PSA, serum PSA is important, because on based on the finding of serum PSA, further investigation can be put. And another thing is the multi-parametric MRI prostate, to see the extent and the CT chest and abdomen. So first of all, these workup should be done to guide the decision.
Does any of my panelists want to add up in this? Basically,
Hello, I'm
yes.
Dr. Sutradhar. Good evening to all.
Mhm.
I also want to add that bone scan we have to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bone
And
scan is one of the imaging modalities that we would
yeah,
want to feel out of.
yeah, we should do
Without
bone scan.
seeing the PSA, all cases we should do the bone scan.
No, PSA we should do, and after PSA for metastatic workup, we should do bone scan and MRI of the spine if there is any compression or not, and we have to do other digital model like chest X-ray or CT scan test. This thing should be done, I think.
So the multiparametric MRI shows a disease which is just localized to the prostate in the left lobe. Acina adenocarcinoma was biopsied with a Gleason score of 7, 4 plus 3, grade 3. And it was staged as T2B and 0, no nodes were present. But the serum PSA was 15 nanograms per milliliter. So would you do anything? Can I ask Dr. Jeevak if you would go ahead with other modalities of maybe investigations?
Dr. Jeebak has not joined.
Okay, so in that case, may I ask Dr. Shraddha, what would you do in this case?
Yes, ma'am, because it is a stage, it is a T2 disease and the PSA is well above 10. So we must rule out metastasis by doing a bone scan, or maybe we can get a PET scan to rule out any kind of spread of the disease.
Okay, so the next question would be, considering localized disease, what would be the risk? If still the disease is localized on examination, what would be the risk?
It will fall into the intermediate risk category, which will be a favorable risk category in the intermediate risk group.
And the NCCN guidelines actually does state that bone imaging is important for the intermediate group risk categories, but they don't allow any other molecular imagings before staging, for staging as such. So my question to Dr. Kunal would be that would there be any implication of molecular imaging for staging before radical treatment of this case?
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. Yeah, good evening to all. Yeah, there is molecular imaging regarding if there is family history, a strong family history of prostate cancer, if father or any sibling or brother has family history of prostate cancer at the last year of 60 years, or who have been died due to prostate cancer. If any siblings have other malignancy of breast, bile duct cancer, then we can go for BRCA1, BRCA2 or Lynch syndrome malignancy on that.
Dr. Sain, would you be able to elaborate which molecular imaging you would want to do for this case?
BRCA1, BRCA2, message 2 6.
So I'm talking
Thank
about
you.
molecular imaging. It's not molecular. Yeah, please.
Thank
please.
you, madam. Yeah, I'm Dr. Sayan Das. So this patient has an unfavorable intermediate risk group. I mean, he falls into that particular risk group for which I think a metastatic workup is warranted. So the recommended or the commonly used test would include a bone scan, but the other molecular imaging that you are asking for is most likely is PSMA PET-CT based on the Australian study, which has shown that almost in 15 to 20% cases, by using a PSMA PET-CT, the disease can get upstaged, leading to change in the management.
Change in this
So
as well as change in the management. So of course, PSMA PET would be one of the tests that could be offered to the patient, and as has been said by you very correctly, that that you can see from this data that is there, that the 18F and 11C choline also stand low as against the PSMA 68 gallium PSMA test, which is much better. And of course, oligometastatic disease can be considered only with testing with these molecular assays, as you can see over here, that when tested by the fluoro 18 fluoro FDG PET, which we normally do, and with the gamma 68 PSMA PETs, you can see that many more metastatic areas have been discovered. And Hoffman et al. They have shown that the PSMA PET CT outperformed conventional imaging, has been already discussed by you. It also has a better sensitivity against the normal PET that we do, specificity as well as accuracy, and they also tend to have a better pelvic nodal metastasis, basically a detection, and also a distant metastasis detection. So this case had been done a PSMA PET, and as you can see, the lesion that is invisible almost on the normal CT scan has taken a pickup, and it was a L2 vertebral metastasis. So now it becomes a T2B N0 M1B disease, stage 4B. So the next question would be to Dr. Dinesh. Dr. Dinesh, could you please categorize the disease? Would it be categorized as oligometastatic, or could you just tell us about oligometastatic?
Yeah, Dr. Patanjali, of course, in this case, I think we are just getting single metastatic at L2 vertebral region. So in different trial, I think Charted, Stampede, different trial has defined different oligometastatic definition. So according to the bony mets and site of bony mets means skeletal and pelvic, other than skeletal and pelvic, lymph nodal metastasis and visceral metastasis, the oligometastatic disease has been with low volume disease has been defined. So less than 4 sites or less than 5. If any of these sites in different trials, if any of these sites are taken, so less than 5 sites, if there is present with metastatic disease, it is defined as oligometastatic disease.
Very well said. It was first described by Hellman and Weishman in 1995 in JCO paper, and they actually said that oligometastasis disease is actually a limited number of clinically detectable metastatic tumors, and the metastatic state has to be in 1 to 5 metastasis. It's, however, a continuum of a spectrum, as you can see, from the localized disease to the widespread systemic disease. And of course, they have also gone ahead with different definitions of oligometastatic subsites, like it can be oligometastatic synchronous, metachronous, or oligorecurrence, or even oligoprogression. But major of the trials that has been already said by Dr. Dinesh, that they have given a cutoff for oligometastasis as 5. So less than 5 should be the region of metastasis. So as we all know that the current standard and treatment options for metastatic hormone-sensitive carcinoma prostate is basically lifelong androgen deprivation therapy and intensified systemic therapy. It has been discussed in the panel ahead. What would be the management of oligometastatic disease? Anyone from the panel? Dr. Kundu? Is it the same as that of metastatic CA prostate? Dr. Kundu is there? Okay. Dr. S.K. Kundu is... Yes. So I think Dr. Shraddha can take it up.
Yes, ma'am. Oligometastatic disease, as has been described by Dr. Dinesh sir, it has already been defined, and it can be it is a little different entity, as we have seen in the trials that have been defined and have seen the results in the STAMPEDE trial, especially where it is showing the radical radiation, localized radiation is going to show some benefit in this patient population. So that is also one option of treatment which we can move ahead with if we are labeling this patient as an oligometastatic disease. So the treatment options are obviously ADT, lifelong ADT, as you mentioned, along with the standard chemotherapy regimens or abiraterone. But the option of radical radiotherapy to the prostate is also one of the options based on the result of the STAMPEDE trial.
So,
yeah,
yes.
Can I add upon? So,
Yes.
yeah, Dr. Badani, yeah. So, the oligometastatic disease is the transitional phase. It's a transition phase between the oligometastasis and multimetastatic disease. So, in these patients, we can offer so many treatment. As rightly pointed out, that it is a case of taking in the trial. So it can be treated as prostate directed radiotherapy and metastatic directed radiotherapy or surgery with ADT, or in some of the trials. I think HORAD trial was a negative study, but the STAMPEDE trial was favorable to radical radiation to prostate.
Some sort of systemic therapy has to be allowed. Can I ask Sayan, what would be the rationale of allowing a systemic therapy as well as a local therapy?
So, yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so you want to go ahead, or shall I?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I just wanted to add something about the previous question that was being discussed. The problem is, see, PSMA PET-CT is not available at all centers. The question is, so which patients do I pick as or I diagnose as oligometastatic disease? The better imaging you have, you pick up more subtle diseases and you can identify them as a true oligometastatic disease. Your bone scan or your simple CT scan may not pick up each and every small metastasis. So optimal selection of patients is very, very critical. Unless you have those really sensitive imaging modalities, it is difficult to carry out these things. The question about systemic therapy, well, in this setting particular, so this is a metastatic hormone sensitive prostate cancer. Now in this setting, I think there are 4 approved drugs. Each of them have shown improvement in overall survival. So systemic therapy in this setting is it has to be used. There's no 2 ways about it. The question is, will adding radiotherapy help? Well, as my previous speakers have already mentioned, the HORAD study in an unplanned subgroup analysis showed that there was a trend towards a benefit in the limited or the low volume, low metastatic burden subgroup. In the STAMPEDE, however, there was a significant improvement in overall survival in this low volume disease. So as this gentleman has only a single metastasis, I would definitely consider for adding local RT to this patient.
There is a role of local RT, and the rationale would be to improve the progression-free survival and the overall survival, which has been charted by the different subset analysis in the different trials. It actually helps in reducing the tumor burden and prolonging the hormone sensitivity as well. In some patients in which hormone therapy has not been started, it may even delay the hormone introduction, and it also delays symptoms secondary to local or metastatic progression. Sometimes it may even be able to cure the metastatic patients, and hence the rationale of adding local therapy in patients with oligometastatic disease. again,
Perfectly said. I think the STOMP trial explicitly looked into this question, that whether they could delay the starting or initiation of ADT.
hormonal
And and ADT-free survival was significantly prolonged by adding SABR in the STOMP, the phase 2 study.
So the Ardil et al. Have also said that the primary tumor is actually responsible for expressing of signal pathways which facilitates the release of tumor cells into the systemic circulation, and hence if we actually act at the local level as well, so it reduces the chemokines and angiogenic factors and may limit the number of metastases even further. So of course local therapy, the rationale is there, and the trials have also said that it is very important to go ahead with local therapy in these patients. So as has been highlighted by everybody, the evidence for this, of course, there were many retrospective papers, 22 almost, and they had many confounding biases, and they all concluded that the local treatment would improve the survival. As you can see, the longer median overall survival was 53% versus 29% in the meta-analysis, systemic analysis that was done. And the HORAD trial, which has been again and again emphasized upon, showed 432 patients, which were metastatic prostate cancer patients. And some of them, that is 216, had ADT alone, whereas the second group had EBRT to the prostate, 70 gray in 35 fractions over 7 weeks, plus ADT. They did not, however, had a significant difference in the overall survival, although the confidence interval cannot exclude a substantial survival benefit. And then came the STAMPEDE trial, which everybody was correlating to. And this is a phase 3 randomized controlled trial. And it had 2,661 patients in 2 arms. Standard of care was with ADT. And the second arm had ADT along with 2 dose regimes, 55 gray in 20 fractions versus 36 gray in 6 fractions. And although they did not also see a overall survival improvement, but they did see an improved failure-free survival comparison. That is the progression-free survival was better, not the overall survival. And however, and they saw it in a low metastatic burden, as everybody has said, that it should be a low metastatic burden. So of course, these were the trials which related to the local therapy to the prostate. But is there any role for metastatic directed therapy also in this, when you've already started the systemic therapy, ADT? Anybody?
I think if local therapy, I am Dr. Sutradhar. After local therapy, we'll wait and observe. We can delay the distal metastatic treatment. If following PSMA scan, if it is increased metastatic size, we can add systemic therapy.
But it is already a metastatic disease to start with.
Oligometastasis, after treating primary,
yes,
the oligometastasis may decrease.
Okay, but then
Dr. Patanjali, may I request you to please conclude in 5 minutes, next 5 minutes.
Okay, so I would go ahead now with the next question. Of course, as you can see over here, that there are many trials that have shown that the local therapy to the metastatic sites also helps to give a progression-free survival advantage. And radiation therapy has helped in a lot of the definitive management of oligometastatic prostatic groups. But just to add on, I would like to ask Dr. Sayan or Dr. Dinesh, Dr. Shraddha, do all oligometastatic groups have benefit? Or do you have to basically see which groups?
Yeah, I think not much aware of these benefit or versus, I think what the trial says, and trial has been had or not. But I think the high risk, I think high risk group is worrisome of getting the benefit.
So the Stampede trial itself has enumerated and you can see the forest plot, and the people that have had an advantage were those with low burden only, and the low burden tumors have been defined in the Stampede as high volume, of course, low volume disease. The high volume was defined as more than 4 or more bony mets with 1 or more outside the vertebral bodies. So the low volume was, of course, those which excluded the high volume. The Gleason score had to be less than 8. And less number of metastatic bony lesions. That is, the Horat trial had said that the lesion should be at least 1 to 4. And of course, you can see over here that the patients who had no nodal disease did better than those who had nodal disease. Even the Johns Hopkins experience shows that their patients, the optimal time for intervention was with lower volume disease. One question I would like to ask Dr. Sayan is that when would you want to try start the local therapy to the prostate?
Okay, so very interesting question. Just one point that you were asking regarding your metastasis directed therapy. Well, the Stampede group is trying to answer that very question because they've added a new arm now where they're adding local RT along with metastasis directed radiotherapy. So we are awaiting the results of that arm in the Stampede trial. With regards to when to start treatment or local RT in these cases, well, what the Stampede group did was they gave 6 cycles of docetaxel, following which they started radiotherapy, IV following which it was randomized, and then radiotherapy was started. So if patients are being planned for initial systemic therapy with docetaxel, I would ask them to finish off the chemo and then come for radiotherapy. If they are being planned with some other agents like abiraterone or enzalutamide, well, I would again prefer to wait for at least say 3 to 6 months before I offer local RT. But again, is there any evidence to back my statement? Probably no.
Yeah, so the Stampede actually recruited patients for radiation within 1 arm of randomization, 1 year of randomization. So the modern radiotherapy techniques we are all aware of. What would be the type of radiation that you would like to provide to the prostate, Dr. Dinesh? Would it be the conventional fractionation or something else?
I think in de novo metastatic oligometastatic disease on presentation, SABR will be preferable in giving the radiation. So my choice will be SABR. I think 35
over the
75 per fraction, 5 fraction.
Sure. Okay. So you all know about the dose fractionation schemes for the SABR. So is that the panel's recommendation, SABR for all, or a hypofractionated regime? Dr. Sayan, Dr. Sutradhar?
SABR is better.
Okay. So
I think both are, I mean, anyone, I mean, it depends. I mean, if you have the options, go for SBRT. Otherwise, even, I mean, both extreme as well as hyperfractionated schedules, both are, I think, valid options.
Yes, very well.
Both are valid.
Yeah. So this was about the local prostate dose, and the technique. SABR would be there with the choice of the panel as well as the dose. Which dose would you prefer? Anybody?
It's around 78 to 81.
Okay. So for SABR 78 as well, or that would be for the conventional? Okay. So even for the optimal dose of fractionation for the spine SBRT, if you're trying that, there are many. Yeah, there are many.
Different center is choice. There different schedule for the metastatic radiotherapy.
So this patient was given the radiation to the local site as well as metastasis directed radiation. Could I ask anybody about the PSA outcome after metastasis directed therapy? When does it start decreasing?
It starts around after 2 to 3 weeks.
Of course, and you can see that it decreases much more in patients who have less metastasis, of course. And you can see the decrease. It decreases much within 1 month, and then goes back to the baseline after about 2-3 months of therapy. So the toxicities, are they acceptable with SABR, or you have any issues with the toxicities? Anybody?
Toxicity is tolerable. There is a acceptable limit.
So, yes, of course, I hope the panel agrees that SABR is the way ahead, and the toxicities are manageable and they are tolerable, and they are almost comparable to the other toxicities in the conventional arms. Even the NCCN guidelines have included prostate cancer, M1 disease, to be treated with ABRT to the primary tumor for low volume disease as of now. So we should be using that as a protocol for the low volume disease. As you can see, otherwise cases may come out like this. So this is just my concluding slide. I would take one maybe takeaway messages from all of the panelists. Dr. Dinesh, anything you
so the oligometastatic disease of the CA prostate should be considered for radical approach, I think, with the treatment approach along with radiation and systemic therapy. We can offer recurrence-free survival much better.
Dr. Shraddha, your take on
yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Again, the same thing that oligometastatic disease, as it is carcinoma prostate, is good, is having a good survival, and it's a tumor with which patients live long. So we should be more aggressive. Should be more focused on the radical treatment, and as far as possible, like in these patients having oligometastasis.
One message that you would like to provide? Yes, Dr. Sayan.
Yeah, Madam, I completely agree with all your concluding remarks. So yes, for low volume metastatic disease, definitely consider adding local radiotherapy, and you may even consider a metastatic directed radiotherapy as well. And whenever possible, go for an appropriate metastatic workup.
So any other remark by Dr. Kishore and Dr. Sutrata?
Madam, one thing that PSMA scan is not available all over India. I think selected some center.
Yes.
So better we should start radical treatment even in localized prostate cancer in intermediate high risk group.
Sure. Dr. Kunal? So this comes to the conclusion of the panel. So everybody agrees that local therapy, local directed prostate therapy should be given. It can be in the form of radiation or even in the form of maybe surgery. And the way ahead is to give radicality to these oligometastatic patients. Thank you very much, everybody, for a very nice discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dr.